Good afternoon. It is 3:01, and I was chatting, and the time got away from me. So we're starting 1 minute late. I hope everyone's doing well today. I'm hiding from this group over here behind this giant projector. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the continuing care series. It's the next to the last one in the series. I believe this is the 5th one. Next month we will end the series with Florence and the chaplains talking about end-of-life preparations, advanced directives, do not resuscitate orders, all the kinds of things that people can put off because we're immortal. It'll be a good discussion. So today we're going to talk about emergency procedures. Lacey is here to catch me if I stumble. He is a big fan of public speaking, so I hope that you will ask him lots of questions directly, because he wouldn't want to leave here without a chance to address you in a public manner. So I'm going to toggle, if you will, back and forth between this PowerPoint and a PDF of the certain pages of the resident handbook. So I'll introduce the topic by PowerPoint. We'll read what the handbook says about that topic, and then we'll come back to PowerPoint for the highlights of that one, and then we can ask questions about it. There are not that many, so I think that might be a good way to go. Okay. And I'm, as you know, still pretty new, so there may be things that I learned in this process as well. So the series name, of course, is Continuing Care 101. So the first one is medical emergencies and daily checks. Okay, you can't read it. Better?
Yes.
Okay. So we use a system called SARA, which stands for Situational Awareness and Response Assistant. It's a product that is built by a company called, let's see, what's the name of the company? I can't remember. I know it. I've worked with them for a long time over several communities, and they do a good job. The name will come to me in a minute. The name of the product they sell, though, is called SARA. And it basically has the pendants that you wear. It also has pull cords that you can pull that are in your bathroom or in other public places. And it also has a feature that is motion detector inside of people's homes, so that we can get a sense of whether a person is moving around or not. So the way that it works is it will, once it's activated, either by pulling a cord or pressing a button, or by, there's those two ways, then it will sort of seize the radios, the two-way radios and cell phones. It'll communicate to us in a myriad of ways. It can send us emails, texts. There's all kinds of ways it can communicate. And it will say something like medical emergency, bedside, apartment 284, or something like that. It'll tell us if a smoke alarm has gone off. It tells us all those things. So one of the things that it does is it has motion detectors. They're in each unit, or we should have said unit here, we're getting away from that word, in each home, and it senses body heat, apparently. This is new for me. I was used to one that had a sensor at the door, so you had to open and close your door. But the one at Cedarfield does motion and body heat. So the system knows there's movement. The system monitors motion from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And a report goes to the front desk every day after 10 a.m. And those residents showing no motion get a call from the concierge desk that says, "Are you okay? We noticed you weren't moving around today." And if you don't answer your phone, then we send someone up to check on you. And that's all. Hello? 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 Test.
I did see a flicker out there in the hallway. I don't know what that had to do with anything, but let me check.
Is it on?
That's all right. That's fine. I'm still learning. We're going to the beach, but baby got sick. So she's getting worse and worse every day. Just congestion. Bad enough where we checked her on Friday. She took her to the doctor. So maybe there's beach this weekend. But it was nice just to hang out around the house.
Furnace filters maybe?
What was that?
Nobody. I didn't see any name tags on my door.
Okay, it's like we're back on. Yeah, so someone goes and checks on you if you haven't had any motion that morning. So that makes sense? Pretty straightforward.
It wakes me up in the morning.
It wakes you up in the morning. So someone calls you and says, "This is your personal wake-up call." Well, we know you don't thrash around in your sleep anyway. I think one question that could come up is, what if I got a dog, and what if the dog's running around but I'm laying out somewhere? And I believe that the way that they've got this configured is such that they can tell the difference between something smaller and a person. So I'm not aware that dogs can activate it. Okay, then there's a medical emergencies. So that's different than the daily check, but Sarah does both of those, the Sarah system. So the emergency pendants is when we press the button, pull the cord, and if you do that, then it'll seize the radios, or however we do it. I think we do it mostly through radios here. I don't think we do text. But the two-way radios will come on and it'll say medical emergency, XYZ, and then nursing and security will respond to that medical emergency. And that's how that works. What's nice about the SARA system, and something they put into place about 10 years ago, and I don't know how long Cedarfield has had it, but they have locators that you can buy. And we have about 60 of these locators throughout the campus. And what happens is if you're in a place that's other than your apartment, and you said you tripped and fell and hurt yourself and you couldn't get up, you can press your pendant, it'll pick up the 3 locations that are closest to you. And we as a staff can then sort of triangulate to get to you. It won't tell you exactly where you are, but it'll give us a good sense of where you are. It can be a little confusing because let's say I lived in an apartment or a cottage 2125, which I did used to live in 2125. And I fell in the library. It might say Paul Gregg 2125, and then it'll give 3 more locations. So the staff sort of know what to listen for. They'll listen for those locations and they can send folks out to find someone. I've heard people ask before, will it work off of the campus? And the answer is no. If you go to Kroger or somewhere like that, it'll be outside of the realm of our system, and so it won't work there. But to my knowledge, it works everywhere on our campus. It won't work in deep run. The SARA system can also be used to make important emergency notifications, but we don't use it for that. We use the call-em-all system. So we don't use the SARA system for that. Okay. Lacey, is there anything more that you want to say about that?
No.
You good? Okay. Okay, so here are the highlights of what we just said. The daily checks are completed every day. And then during an emergency, once it's activated, SARA messages through radios and cell phones, nursing and security respond. Something that's not in our handbook that we should put in there in the next revision is that if you have a clear life-threatening emergency, or you happen upon something that is clearly 911 needs to come, you should call 911 first, because you don't want to be wasting time. But once you call 911, then press your pendant or pull your cord so that we can then respond as well. Why is that important? Because if it's at night, we want to be sure we know security can meet the emergency people, make sure they go to the right place, all those kinds of things we still want to do. What we don't want is we don't want you to press your pendant when someone might be having stroke-like symptoms, for example. Then 6 or 7 minutes go by, and then a nurse gets there and goes, well, we should call 911, and then 4 or 5 minutes go by until the ambulance can come. Let's just save all that time by dialing 911 right away, and they'll be responding. So dial 911, then let us know. Okay, fire procedures. So we'll go to the handbook. So it says that we are built to the latest standards to prevent the spread of fires. I think when we revise it, I'll take some of that language out because I don't know for a fact that we're built to the latest standards. But I do know we're built really well for fires. So here are some questions that we have here. What do I do? Oh, when we say the latest standards to prevent the spread of fires, I think what we should say instead is that we are a fully sprinkled steel and concrete building. We're not a wooden building, and we have sprinklers everywhere, even in the attic. There's sprinklers. So for insurance purposes, we're considered fully sprinkled. I had long said, because I've always worked in these kinds of buildings, that you'll drown before you burn up at a place like Cedarfield. If you've ever seen the amount of water that comes out of a sprinkler, I mean, it's not the kind of thing you want to look up and hold your mouth open. You will drown, for sure. So it puts us at a great advantage because we're very unlikely to have a raging fire through the building. What do I do if there's a fire in my apartment? And again, this is right out of your handbook. So you stay calm and you leave right away and close the door, but don't lock the door. So you don't need to spend much of time putting the fire out, because that's just going to end up probably hurting you and giving you smoke problems. So just leave the apartment, close the door, keep the door open, unlocked so the fire emergency don't have to bang it down to get into it, and then find an alarm in the hallway and pull the station and let people know. By then, the smoke alarm would have gone off inside your home, and the fire department would have been called automatically. But go ahead and find a station and pull it. That's if it's inside your home. We'll then be responding, the fire department will be responding. There's a 1 hour fire rating between apartments. There's a 1 hour fire rating between apartments. And as we said, from the ceiling to the floor, there's a 4-inch slab of concrete between those with smoke penetration, with hole that all the smoke penetrations are filled with a special fire caulk. So you can leave your apartment, close the door, but don't lock it. What if you do if there's a fire in my cottage? It's the same thing. You should stay calm. You should leave it once. You should get out of there, and then you should find a place safety and call 911. You can go across the street to someone else's home, dial 911. But again, when your alarm goes off, it's going to automatically call the fire department. But it's a good idea to go ahead and call. What do I do if I hear a fire alarm while I'm inside my apartment, but the fire's not in your apartment? You just hear the fire alarm. And here we want to stay calm. We have smoke alarms and sprinkler heads throughout the building. We want you to stay in your apartment, keep the door closed, but keep the door unlocked. So the closed door will keep you safe from smoke, which is really the #1 killer in fires. And it will also, if it's unlocked, allow the fire department to come get you if they want to get you behind an official smoke door or get you out of the building in some way. What do I do if there are alarms sounding while I am in a common area of the building? If you're in a common area and you're not in direct danger, just make sure you're behind a closed door, stay put. If you're in a hallway, proceed to a common space behind a closed door. Stay clear of the travel routes if firefighters need them, and just wait for everything to be all clear, which is essentially the fire alarm stops sounding. When it stops sounding, everything is all clear. Good. Lacey approves of what I just said. Does Cedarfield conduct fire drills? And we do. We do that in health services in all the licensed areas. We do it on a monthly basis. Every shift, every quarter, which means we do one a month. First shift 1 month, second shift the next month, third shift the third month. That covers a quarter, and then we start over again. So they're not announced, so we treat them if there were a tree fire. Residents visiting health services should follow the directions of staff members. Do we ever evacuate the building? The building offers maximum fire protection with smoke detectors and sprinklers. Fire officials are the only ones who will make the decision to evacuate. Instructions or assistance will be given by fire officials when and if an evacuation is ever necessary. If there was ever a catastrophic fire, which is highly unlikely in a building built like ours is, our evacuation plan is horizontal. The fire department really what happens is the fire department comes and they take charge of the scene and they get people out. Lacey and I have met with the fire officials here because we both wanted to get acquainted with them. And we had the fire chief and an assistant come out and talk to us. Lacey had arranged for the fire department to come out, and they spent a whole day. They sent all the stations that could potentially respond to us driving around. They walked around inside the buildings. That was probably 3 months ago? Four months ago. And so they're very familiar with us. The keys, the entry to the buildings if they're locked, all those things are all covered with all the firefighters who could potentially be called to this site. So we have a good relationship with the fire department. Why do fire doors close if there's no alarms ringing? Our fire alarm system and our door systems are wired so that if an alarm rings in one area, those doors within a given vicinity close as a precautionary measure. So if you can't hear the alarm, somewhere an alarm went off and all the doors closed. And that's just the way the doors interact with the fire system. And they won't open again. You can press them open, but they won't latch with a magnet until the fire's alarm has been turned off. And why does it seem like the fire alarms last forever? And the reason they last forever is because in the case 911 comes every time, the fire department shows up. If it's burnt toast, and we tell them it's just burnt toast, they're going to come anyway because they have to be sure that it was burnt toast and no one's life is in danger. And then they have to get smoke out of the building and make sure that they feel good before they tell us it's all clear. And only when they tell us it's all clear do we silence the fire alarm. So it's not an independent decision that maintenance makes or security makes. The fire department tells us when we can silence the fire alarm. Which I think is a good practice because they want to come and be sure. As luck would have it, old Paul would be up there and say, looks good to me. And then there's some spark somewhere that I haven't looked at and we have a big fire because someone that was not qualified tried to make it all clear. So we want the fire department to do that. Any questions about fire?
What about smoke?
What about smoke? Can you ask more specifically?
Often we've seen pictures of fires where the smoke eases out under the doors.
Mm-hmm.
How do we combat that?
Yeah. So the way we have it now, we don't really instruct people specifically to put a towel under their door, although we could. What we do is say close your door, and so that's going to protect you from the largest amount of smoke. Within a few minutes, 5 or so, the fire department will be here. They will assess the situation, and if they needed to move people from a location to another location, they will begin to do that. Does that answer your question, Barbara? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Personally, I'm leaving my apartment because the alarm's too loud.
She said she leaves her apartment because the alarm's too loud. Yeah, the alarm is very loud. I have been asked, not here, but in another community, why does it have to be so dang loud? And it really has to be loud enough to wake a deaf person from their sleep. It has to be very loud. The decibel is set by regulation. It has to be a certain loudness, if that's a word. Anything else on that? Okay. Okay, so the highlights from what we just said, the main building is fully sprinkled, it's steel and concrete, so we should feel very good about the safety of the building. The alarm system is dialed directly to 911, so if it goes off, it automatically shoots straight to the call center and the fire department starts to respond. Our fire response plan is called Shelter in Place, which means we want you to stay in your apartment, close your door, and wait further instruction unless the fire alarm goes off. And if it goes off, that means the fire department has told us it's all clear. The Henrico Fire Department takes charge of the scene when they arrive. Believe me, they do. In another community, I came in about 11 o'clock at night because someone called and said a fire alarm had gone off. There was some piece of machinery that was smoking inside the air duct. And they had trouble finding it. And I tried to introduce myself, and they basically just pushed me out of the way. They really don't care who you are or what your title is, because when they arrive, this is their scene. And they are very much in charge. And in licensed areas, we drill each shift once per quarter, or one drill per month. Okay? Tornado procedures. So we'll go to see what the handbook says. We have some winter storm procedures there. So what we say in the handbook is the difference between a watch and a warning. A watch means that the conditions are favorable for a tornado to form, but one has not formed yet. And in that case, we all want to just be on alert. We want to be on the lookout for news that a tornado has in fact formed. Tornado warning means that it says spotted in the area, but you and I have all watched the news, and a lot of times you'll hear the weather person say, a Doppler indicated tornado. I don't know that anybody's seen it yet, but they're saying our Doppler looks like a tornado has probably formed. So I'm saying language more like a tornado is likely to have formed, is what a tornado warning is. And the other bad thing about tornado warnings is that because television markets are so big, you'll get, there's a tornado warning, a tornado has been sighted, but it's 30 miles from here, or 10 miles from here. There's absolutely moving away, there's no danger that it's coming here. So I think when a warning comes, we all just have to use our common sense and decide whether we're really in danger. My wife is deathly afraid of tornadoes. And I can't say to her, honey, the tornado is 10 miles away and going the other direction. She still wants to get in the bathtub with the mattress on top of her. Like, okay. No, she's not that bad. But we just have to use our common sense about when we're really in danger. But if you get a tornado warning, you need to go inside. You need to seek shelter in a building away from windows. You want to get in a bathroom or somewhere like that, in a windowless room, to take a blanket with you to cover up from flying debris that might occur. And you want to wait until it's clear before leaving any unsheltered area. So some of the things that I want you to know are that the watch is favorable, warning it has formed. We're to go away from windows. We don't say in our handbook, and I think we should when we revise it, that we advise people to go to a lower floor. I think most tornado and emergency experts agree that wind speeds are higher, the wind speeds are increased at a higher elevation. And going to a lower floor is always advised. And so I think we'll revise this when we update it to say that. And I also want people to know that we're not going to notify you if there's a tornado warning. We're not going to send a call at all, or we're not going to do anything to let you know. What we will do is ask you, if you're really concerned about tornadoes, to be in touch with one of the news applications that you can put on your phone that will send you a message when there's inclement weather or dangerous weather. Weather radios, although it's an old technology, still very effective in letting you know when you need to be alerted to dangerous weather. In licensed areas, we have a different set of responsibilities there. And we do need to be aware, and we do need to take action for staff, and so we do that. We do tornado drills in the licensed areas, and what we really do is get people out into a hallway. We really can't go to lower floors because of the difficulty and the danger of doing that. But we go into those hallways until the danger has passed. And so we have had 2 of those drills since I've been here. So we do drill it there. Part of the reason why we won't notify people of independent living is because I've just been so worried that it's going to be so people dependent the security, let's say security has a job of knowing, well, what if we have a new security guard or someone who's just here for one shift, who's never worked here before? You're going to feel like, oh, we're going to call you, but we may not. Something just may go wrong. So we want you to have your own system if you're concerned about it. Everybody clear on tornadoes? Are there any questions about tornadoes?
I'll call you back.
Yes, ma'am.
I've been using the tunnel that goes from the atrium to the building, because I didn't see anything that happened there.
She's saying that she has been using the tunnel that goes from the atrium to the new wellness building as a safe place. And that's right, it's underground. It would be a very safe place to be in the event of a tornado.
I don't have to carry a mattress.
And she doesn't have to carry a mattress with her. And that's true. You know, if you can get down to the second floor where housekeeping is, that I imagine would be a very safe area. It's partially underground as well. Really, the main thing is if you can get down and just away from windows, I think is the main thing. Everybody okay with that? Evacuation. So we don't, in the handbook, have any, we don't address evacuations that I can see in the handbook. And so I think we ought to talk about it. And maybe when we revise it, we'll add some language about evacuation. So I just wrote some thoughts here. One is that this room, the fellowship hall, is considered an internal shelter. These red plugs around the hall tell us that it has power on the generator, so that if we had problems that people needed to be here during a time there was no electricity, for oxygen or other reasons they need electricity, we can do that here in this room. It's considered our internal shelter. It has heating and air conditioning throughout a power outage. We do have a relocation agreement with Deep Run Baptist Church. So that could be a place if we needed to take some people somewhere. I doubt it could fit all 500 of us, but we do have this agreement with Deep Run Baptist Church. We also have other Pinnacle communities that we can take advantage of in their common spaces. If they had empty rooms, we could use them. That would be a little more scattered of an approach and would be pretty intensive to try to figure out in an emergency. What really is the biggest ally that we have in case of emergency is an organization called the Virginia Healthcare Alerting and Status System, VHAS. Lacey and I met with the director of VHAS a month ago, something like that, a month, maybe 2 months ago. His name is Pete Savoda. And we met with him because we wanted to get familiar with him and what his organization does to help us in the case of emergency. So I think we have a very good working relationship with him. He knows us and we know him. And what they do is they send a signal out if there's an emergency in any community or a local emergency to all participators in Central Virginia, which is our area. And they'll let them know, we need 60 healthcare beds. Do you have room? Do you have 5 or 10? So they come in and they help get transportation and they identify places to go. They work with the Henrico County Emergency Management Service. They work with fire department. In fact, they came out of didn't they come out of the fire department? No, it was emergency management came out of the fire. But they have a very extensive network and they test their system. It seems like every month they're doing a test of it. So they would be very, very important to us, particularly for the licensed areas, to get dependent people to a place where they can get the services they need. VHAS. We also met, at least I met with a lot of people, because this is on my mind. I don't want to not know what we're doing if we have an emergency. But we met with the emergency management people. One of the representatives came over and they told us a little bit about what they do too. one of the primary functions they have is to review our emergency plans and be sure that they're okay. We have yet to submit ours to them, but that's one of the functions they have. And another function they have is to be in partnership with the fire department and others. Through the fire department, we'd have access to the Red Cross and to all kinds of other folks who could send support if we needed it. For example, if we had to be transferred to some large space like a high school auditorium or gymnasium, they could seize the school. They could get the Red Cross to bring cots and supplies, medicines. Those kinds of things would start to happen if we really had.
Power was going out. That's what happened before the power. So that means the system.
I think you're covering it all. What time was it? Okay, it's an emergency. I would have went up there, turned the generator on, cause it was, I don't know. I think they all are. That's probably could have been. I'll ask them. I was out. I kind of listened to them. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I listened to them.
Okay, so I think you get the point about evacuation. There's what we can do, and then there's a lot of community resources. And one of the things I want you to know is that Lacey and I have built relationships with all of those resources because we want them to know who we are, and we want to know who they are. And I think we've pretty much gone through our list of everybody that we need to have over and have a relationship with. Yes, ma'am.
If we have to be evacuated, how are we going to be evacuated if we do not have a car?
If we're going to be evacuated, how will we be evacuated? And that's part of what the emergency management and the VHOS would help us with.
They would bring buses.
They would seize buses, probably school buses would be the most likely thing they would do, but they would help arrange that. We couldn't do it with 2 or 3 buses that we have here. There's just no way. And every community has that same kind of dilemma.
We're not in a floodplain, are we?
We're not in a floodplain. To my knowledge, we're not in a floodplain. It's a good question. We're at the top of a hill, she says. So, last things about evacuation. A full evacuation of our community is extremely unlikely. Extremely unlikely. A partial evacuation is a little more likely, and that might come about if part of our building was damaged, maybe by wind damage or tornado, or a fire was came out in some way that the fire department said you can't live in this building, I think even that would be pretty unlikely. But a partial is much more likely than a full evacuation, which would be very difficult to foresee what would cause us to do that. A gas leak that's outside of a building might need to temporarily evacuate one building, but not the whole place. Our licensed areas do have plans and procedures for relocation. They have procedures for getting people's medical charts, getting their medication administration records, their medicines, the medical supplies that we need, identifying who's who. So all that has been put into regulation since Hurricane Katrina. And so all nursing facilities have these kinds of evacuation plans. So we have a good plan there. And that's pretty much it for us. Yes, Lacey is here to answer all your questions.
Got a question on smoke or gaseous stuff. Do we have any protection for those who have breathing problems? Basically, suppose you had a major fire in a neighborhood, not necessarily here, and the air is unbreathable for some people with breathing problems. Do we have any apparatus here that's on standby that can be issued to those folks?
Yeah.
So he's asking if we had some nearby emergency that was of gaseous nature that made the air unsafe to breathe. I think that's your question. Do we have any apparatus here that we would use in an emergency like that?
Like gas masks?
Like gas masks. The answer is no, we don't. I worked in a community once where in the town next to our town, which is 5 miles away, a big chemical plant blew up in the middle of the night. Thankfully, the wind was blowing the other way, and they evacuated other places. We were on standby. We talked about evacuating and the emergency people in the weeks after that, as we were sort of thinking through what we would have done, said if that happened, it's more than likely we would have asked you to just stay in place. The worst thing you could do was try to leave and be outside. So we probably just want you to be inside. We might come by and tell you to turn off your air conditioning systems and those kinds of things. But we'd stay inside. But we don't have gas masks that we would distribute to our 500 residents.
Have we found out what's causing the popping sound in that elevator going from the art gallery to the 3rd floor?
Okay, the question was, there's the popping sound in the elevator, and that's in the wellness building, going from 3rd to 1st floor. I rode the elevator and listened to it. We have the elevator company. I don't know if they've already come out or not. I'll come and check it. It sounded to me like it's just the clicks from as the what are they, the
Different floors?
well, no, the contacts. That's what I was trying to say. It sounds to me like it's the contacts making as the controls are working. But again, we'll have the elevator
They used
company.
to do that, did the guy check it out when he was here? Like I told you before, it sounds like there's a resistor or a arrestor or something in there that's making that noise.
So, I'll just say, are there any questions about emergency procedures?
No, emergency, if you're in there, the fire starts, there's no sprinklers, I don't think, in the elevator. So it is a matter of big concern for me at least.
He'll look into it. Other questions about emergency procedures, questions that you're thinking? I had a person recently who said, oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to ask if I know that there's specific areas that have generator, but it's not necessarily the apartments except for the light. Are there areas that, other than this room, that are generator covered, that people could go to if they needed to.
She's asking about generator havens, places where there is, like, other than the fellowship hall. I'm not aware of a room other than the fellowship hall that would be considered a safe haven for us for electric.
Well, I don't know about electric, but I was just talking about it in general. But I think the dining area is on its own generator.
She thinks the dining generator is on its own generator. And that, to my knowledge, is not accurate. It does not have its own generator.
And here, and the library.
Okay. Dr. Cietti is saying that the lobby and the library could also be those places. I know for sure this room. There's currently one generator for this building, for the whole campus. It's the one that's just outside the marketing door. And it powers a minimal amount of things inside people's homes. It'll keep the air going in hallways. It'll give you light. There's a outlet outside, in the hallway, outside each door that's powered. But it's pretty minimal. We'll keep things in the kitchen hot and cold. I'm sure there's some lighting in the kitchen. The hood will keep drawing, cooking smoke, those kinds of things. The health center has a little bit more. D-Wing currently, as you know, has nothing. But at some point, hopefully in the next few months, we'll have a start on that project, and we'll get a generator ordered in the next few weeks, which could take about 8 or 9 months to arrive. So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being this was the most riveting presentation I have ever been to, and 1 being, if you had to say one more word, I'm going to throw myself out the window. Are you ready? A 4. That's an honest answer.
5. I would have said 5 or 6.
This is exciting. Oh, she gave it a 5. Well, that's not bad. She gave it a 1. That's terrible. There's a window.
I am a firm believer in the more that you do things, the more comfortable people get, so that when there is a true crisis, you don't have, it's just automatic like they do with healthcare. I truly think that there should be a time when the weather's not super bad and that we evacuate the entire building.
So she's suggesting, in the name of training,
Yes.
that we consider doing a full building evacuation.
No announce.
Yes, ma'am.
I would be concerned about that as one who worked in a high-rise building and had to do things where we went down the stairs and evacuated 1,000 students. Somebody is very likely to get injured because when you evacuate, you can't use elevators. And people here who had to go down 4 flights of steps, I would think we would be more likely to injure somebody doing an evacuation practice drill than we would be to help them.
A counterpoint is being made, and the counterpoint is that doing an evacuation drill, because you'd have to use the stairwell and not the elevator, could result in significant injury to people and may not be worth that cost just to practice a drill.
No, there are elevators that work even when there's a fire, so they're labeled.
Their generator backup, I don't know if they're working.
We have some generator backup, but I'm not aware of any elevator that you can use in the event of fire. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a number to call at Cedarfield in the case of an emergency? You don't need 911, but for some reason you feel there's an emergency. Is there a phone number to call?
Is there a phone number to call in case you have an emergency that is less important, that you don't need to call a 911? I think there are 2 options. You could call the gatehouse, or you could just press your pendant and someone will call you.
will work in emergencies? I'm not aware of what the elements.
I don't know if there's a published list. We can try to put that out. I think all the elevators are generator back. If there's two elevators beside each other, one of them is generator backup and the other one isn't. I just don't know which one there are. Are they labeled? So it should be labeled. But all the elevators should be generator backup if they're around the campus.
I don't think all of them are. All of them?
Well, not all of them, but if there's two beside each other, one of them will be generator backup, not both of them.
With that answer, would anyone like to increase their answer to, have we pushed into the 7 range? No. Oh, yes, 2 people have agreed that it's a 7.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, okay.
I was just gonna say, I think you covered very adequately what to do in case of an emergency.
Okay.
It was not riveting, but thank you very much.
And it's saying we adequately covered all the emergency procedures, which by their nature are not riveting, which must be the reason why we didn't get a 7. Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to put this out in writing? Because we've been given a lot of information this afternoon. It can get pretty confusing,
Mhm.
but just important steps. Could you do that?
I have already. I took everything that we talked about today from the handbook. So it is in your handbook, but I need to revise it just a little to add a few little things, but the spirit of all of it is completely accurate. So just refer to your handbook.
Well, for dummies like me then, would you remind everybody that we should look at the handbook from time to time just to familiarize ourselves?
She's making the point that everyone should, from time to time, review your resident handbook so that you're aware of the emergency procedures and other procedures around the campus. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, to eliminate the accidents happening, you could have everybody that's on the second, third, and fourth floors just come to Parkview not Parkview, but to Town Center to exit. That solves that problem.
So we're getting into some evacuation planning, how it could happen. Yes, ma'am.
The red fire boxes in the hallways.
The red fire boxes in the
I don't know
hallways.
if they're called fire boxes, but.
No, they're called pull stations.
Pull stations.
Mhm.
Does it take a lot of tech knowledge or power I don't know how to use one of those.
Does it take any special knowledge or any strength to use a pull station? And the answer is no. They're designed to be used by the general public. And so ours, I don't even think ours have a cover on them, do they? I don't think they do. So I think you just pull down and the fire alarm will go. What I do know is that it can, because it's funny, we have been taught our whole life not to mess with a pull station. And in the event of emergency, what's the one thing we should do is pull a pull station. So people do have a block about pulling it. I experienced once where we had a resident go missing from one of the skilled areas. It was very frightening. It was the first time in my career I've had to call the police. And calling the police was kind of a step because you get trained, you don't do these things. So there is a hesitance. You have to just get over that and do it. Because you can't over notify people of an emergency. You can under notify. Yes, ma'am.
My roommate's 7-year-old nephew pulled it in our apartment building when I was in college. He did it pretty easily.
She's recanting a story where a 7-year-old pulled it, so we should be in good shape to pull them. The same phenomenon occurs with fire extinguishers. And we've been talking about here, we haven't planned it yet, but we were talking about holding a education session for the team members, where everybody gets a chance to do it, to pull the pin, to squeeze. It's pass. Pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. So everybody will get a chance to experience that. So in the case they needed one, in the panic of the moment, they would be able to make actionable that phrase we've all memorized, pass. Pull, aim, squeeze, sweep.
At the base.
At the base of the fire, that's right. Other questions? All right, well, thank you so much for coming. Next month we'll have end-of-life things with Florence and Trish, and then that'll be the end of the series, and we'll probably start all over again in January and just keep running through these topics. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been assigned a shift to bring some loads